Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Wright-Heuman, cartoonist extraordinaire, and welcome to the first of the contributor interviews for Universal Flaws of Robotics. I am joined today by Colleen Frakes. Colleen is a graduate of the Center for Cartoon Studies inaugural class, has won the 2007 Zurich Grant for first graphic novel, Tragic Relief, and in 2009 won an Ignatz Award for her second book, Woman King. And now she is working on an anthology project with us.
Thanks so much for having me, Ben.
Absolutely. Colleen's submission is the story Self-Assessment, an adorable comic about robot librarians, hence subtitle. So, Colleen, I sped through a lot of your backstory. We'll definitely be getting into it. There's one big question I had that I got off of your bio page on your website. It's the first thing on there says Colleen Frakes grew up on a prison island, parentheses, really.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
So I grew up on McNeil Island. I lived there. We moved there when I was in the 6th grade, and my parents were there for 10 years. And McNeil Island was the last prison island in the United States that is only, you can only reach it by air or sea. Because usually when I bring this up, people bring up Rikers. Rikers is a jail, not a prison. And I think you can technically drive there. But McNeil Island was shut down in 2011, I want to say. So right now there's nobody living out there.
So when you were living there, it was an active prison island. Like it was actually...
Yeah, there was about 1,000 inmates. Yeah.
Was your family affiliated with the prison at all, or?
Yes, every civilian who lived there had to have a family member who was considered essential personnel at the prison, so had to be available in case of an emergency. So I think when my dad got hired, he was the captain, and then my mom later joined the investigations team. So then they both became essential personnel.
Gotcha. So it's such an interesting way for it to start. Like, were you going to school on the island? Did you?
Yeah, I never went to school on the island. My sister did for 5th grade. They had a little, I think it was 2-room schoolhouse for the elementary school kids on the island with 2 teachers. And then once you got to middle school, junior high, you had to start taking the ferry off every single day, which meant waking up very, very early and getting on a bus and then a ferry and then another bus to get to school.
Man, I can imagine. Like, were you able to get away for college, or did you not leave until Center for Cartoon Studies?
My parents moved off while I was in college. So I did my, because I'd gotten a really good scholarship to go to community college. So I was still on the island that first year of college. But then when I went off to the Evergreen State College, I got to move off. And that's about the time my family left too.
Gotcha. So moving ahead, as I said, you were in the inaugural class for the Center for Cartoon Studies. I'm experienced with the Center for Cartoon Studies. I was class of 2016, so a ways after you. But I'm curious what it was like in those early days, like when it was. I can only imagine that it was a bit of a mess at the very beginning.
Yeah, they were really figuring out what they were doing. They called us the pioneer class a lot, and we felt like pioneers that coming in and suffering through the cold winter and starving a little bit. But for example, like Steve Bissett, he hadn't moved closer to CCS yet. He was still living way out in Marlboro. So we only got him 1 day a week. So on Tuesdays, Steve would drive in and he would teach from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And so we had that whole day with just Bissett. And there was stuff like James Kolchaka would come down from Burlington, like for a while it was once a week, and then he kind of seemed to lose interest. So he came less frequently after that. I understand. Well, I saw the second year how much better they had it. They definitely learned from what all we went through. And then it seems like right now they've got like a really solid faculty. You all know their lesson plans, and that. I mean, can you speak to that? How are things there now? It's more than 10 years on.
Yeah. Well, I know things have changed since I left, but when I was there, they definitely had it a little bit more figured out. I don't know who the staff was when you were there, but we had Steve, we had Jason Lutz. We had James Sturm coming in for some stuff. Bill Scavone was doing figure drawing. Did they even have figure drawing at the beginning?
They did. James's wife taught it for a while, Rachel Gross, and she also took us one day into the printmaking studio. And then you had a lot of cartoonists going, I don't understand why we're learning printmaking. So it was very much whoever they had available. They were teaching us all sorts of stuff. We were doing poetry for the first half of the year, and it was a lot of cartoonists going, why are we learning poetry? And then I was over there going like, I'm going to make poetry comics. Nobody wants to read these.
See, what's interesting to me about that is, does that mean there was a writing teacher when you were there?
There was. First, it was Peter Money, who was a great poet. And then there was, I can't think of her name right now, but she's a mystery writer.
Sarah Stewart Taylor.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
And because I stuck around Vermont for 5 or 6 years because I couldn't afford to leave. So, but Sarah, when she started teaching us, she had no kids. And by the time I left, she had 3. So she really didn't have time to teach anymore on top of her writing work.
Yeah. No, I get that. One of the things that got me to come out to CCS was talking to Sarah, because I was planning on doing mystery comics as my main thing. So I was like, hey, mystery writer affiliated with the school. I need to find out more about this.
Very cool.
Yeah, but it is interesting how much that program does evolve. But the core, at least when I was there, is they do throw a lot of stuff at you like that. I'm shocked that people didn't like the printmaking, because my class loved that we got the screen print, and like we did screen printed comic covers and stuff like that.
So screen printing we learned from Tom Devlin, and that was great. This was the kind of printmaking where you have a big silver plate and you carve into it, that kind of thing.
Wow!
More like fine. Yeah, that was like fine art printmaking.
That's wild. We never got to do that. We only got to work with the screens, but it is true that they do kind of throw a lot of stuff at you, and there's always a little grumbling from some people, like, when are we ever going to use this? And the answer is, you never know when you're going to use it. Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's half the fun of being a cartoonist or being an artist, is you get to mess around with whatever you're given. I still credit, like, we had to do a mimicry assignment. It's one of the first ones we did, where we were assigned a newspaper comic and had to learn to copy that style for a couple strips.
Yeah, we did that one. Yeah.
You guys did that? I got assigned the Katzenjammer Kids, which is a weird one. Like, really, really old one about 2 German immigrant kids, and like has not aged well. But the funniest thing about doing that is it completely changed how I draw kids. Like, I still draw kids based on this style. So you never know what's going to stick.
Yeah, exactly. And also CCS is really isolated. So them just sort of like using what they had, whatever artists tend to be moving through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So post CCS, you got busy. Like, there's you have at least 2 graphic novels mentioned, and you've done work for Zest Books, Mirage Studios, Dark Horse. What was the path like after leaving that inaugural class?
Let's see. After leaving the inaugural class, I guess I was lucky because I think that's when they were still letting. They didn't. The class after me wasn't completely full, so I think they let me stay in the studio. This was over at the Telegraph building, so I'm pretty sure I still had some studio space for a while after graduation. And then after that, Matt Busey, who at least at the time he seemed to own most of White River Junction. I don't know if he still does. But he let me rent some cheap studio space as well in the Tip Top building. So it was like, okay, so I had this job at the Dartmouth Library. I don't have enough money to leave Vermont, so I'll just put my head down here and work my day job and make comics whenever I have any free time. And so yeah, it was really nice while it lasted.
Yeah, that connection to Dartmouth is always an interesting one for CCS, whenever they're able to get stuff going over there.
Yeah, and it's really the largest employer in the region. So if you can find a job over there.
Absolutely. From there, was that when Tragic Relief came out while you were working at Dartmouth and using that studio?
So Tragic Relief ended up being my senior thesis at CCS. Originally, I had this big, grand Russian fairy tale thing planned, but I got stuck in this rut where I kept redrawing the same few pages over and over. And I'd bring those pages to class to critique group and then take those notes and go back and fix them. And then after many, many rounds of that, I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I just want to draw some mermaids. So that's what Tragic Relief was. So then I finished that, and that was my senior thesis. And then I also sent it over to the Xeric people. We'd been fortunate that we'd had a couple field trips over to Mirage Studios to talk, and they'd actually talk to us about the Xeric grant, which is great when you can talk to the person giving the grant money and be like, okay, what do you want to see? What's a bad application? What's a good application? So that was very helpful. I'm sad. I know that they stopped doing those grants because of Kickstarter. So that's too bad, because I think that there's definitely space for both of those things to exist.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, so then got that grant money not long after I graduated, and put out a book. And the nice thing about that is, and also you can do this with Kickstarter sometimes too, you get this influx of cash to print a book. Then you take the money from selling that first book and you use it to print the second book. And that second book I did was Woman King. It's about a girl raised by bears. So that carried me for a little bit.
Yeah. It is funny that I hadn't thought about the fact that Kickstarter does kind of take the same general role as grants. I actually applied for a grant for this book for the first time, and kind of started going through that experience. And it really was funny realizing how nice grant money is in comparison to trying to, do a Kickstarter, which is basically pre-ordering more than anything. Just because the grant money is given to you for what you said you want to use it for. And there's no expectation of the money going back to anything. You can pretty much just use it for what you've requested.
Mm-hmm.
So would have been nice to get that. We ended up using Kickstarter as a fallback, but it's been it's something that I'll definitely be looking more into in the future, because I mean it's a very interesting avenue of revenue.
Yeah, and I would encourage more creators out there to both look for grants, and if you are successful creators out there, to make some grants. I mean, for those who don't know, the Xeric grant grew out of the money from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So when an indie creator out there finds a bit success, that's one way you can pay it forward, is to create a grant like that.
That's an interesting way to think about it. I don't think about the creation of grants at all. So is that something actually you've considered doing with any of the funds you've been able to raise from your graphic novels, offering a grant to others?
I haven't gotten to that point yet. I hope if I ever get there someday, I would love to either make a micro press or to do a grant thing. I would probably want to hop on something existing, like Annie Koyama's grants. If I ever have the kind of success where I could sort of ride her coattails and help her out with that would be wonderful. Or I know I'm a member of the I think it's Cartoonist Collective, big group of cartoonists trying to band together and make some, we can't be a union, but make something union like happen. So so when they had some awards a while back, so I tossed a few bucks toward that. But if they ever want to do some kind of grant thing, I'd love to be a part of it. I don't want to do something solo the way Mirage Studios. I can't remember if that was Peter Laird or the other turtle guy. but I don't think I could do something solo the way they did. I would definitely want to be part of a group project working on that.
Well, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Let's pivot a little bit towards your submission for this anthology. The story self-assessment was kind of funny because one of the big concerns a lot of artists have right now is what AI is doing to art, and the dangers of people's work and style being appropriated in an inappropriate way, credit not being shared, artists getting cut out for what is, at least for now, inferior product, but could theoretically be changing in the future. And while I'm not saying in any way that your story is saying the opposite of that, it is interesting that you did a story that is more along the lines of the having a robot be helpful while facing this exact type of fear from humans. And what made you decide to go in that direction?
That came out of two things. One is working in libraries for 10 years. The whole time I worked in libraries, I would see these lists of like top 10 careers that are going to be replaced by automation or going to be replaced by AI, and librarians were always at the top of the list. And then I would go to big conferences like ALA, library conventions, and I would see vendors there talking about, here are our inventions that will replace the workers in your library. And I want to say I've even seen articles about fully automated libraries in other countries that have no humans working there. And I don't fully like that. And then it also came out of a conversation I had with my father-in-law, who is a brilliant engineer. He has a bunch of patents. He's invented all this stuff. And he was talking about AI. And I was telling him, look, I want AI to do the things I don't want to do. I don't need AI to draw my comics. I don't need AI to make movies or music. It'd be great if AI could do my taxes. Or there's never enough healthcare workers. AI to do healthcare. Or working in the library. If AI could do my shelf reading, or the parts of the job that humans don't want to do, and that also humans aren't great at, the parts that take perfection. Any human is going to make mistakes.
Right.
Yeah, and in art, for the mistakes are part of what makes art good, and also the point of art is expressing what it's about to be human. We don't need AI or robots to do that. So, yeah, that's where the story came out of.
Yeah. I will say one of the things I always joke about with when people complain about AI art is whenever it's pointed out that one of the ways you can tell is because they can't draw hands, and I start sweating because it's like none of us can draw hands. What are you talking about?
Yeah, hands are hard.
Yeah, but I completely get what you're saying. I've thought for a while, like, I do see parts of my process that I could see an AI being helpful for, but I wouldn't necessarily want it in the final product. One of the big things for me is I don't really like thumbnailing. I find it kind of a pain. It's one of the more frustrating, like trying to figure out cool layouts and feeling like I'm stuck. If I could like feed my usual style into a personal AI and have it help me figure out possible layouts, that would be great. Like I could see that being a great use of that kind of thing. But I don't want it doing all the drawing for me because I could do it better.
Yeah, or figuring out like problems with the story. I guess some people say that spell checkers are a kind of AI, which like great. I'm happy to let the robots check my spelling for me, but they don't need to be. Nobody needs them to create art or any of the fun parts of this.
Right. And I mean that is a big part of self-assessment. Is the robot that's brought in, the librarian's not crazy about it, but it is doing jobs that no one else in the library really wants to do.
Yeah, and then there's things that the AI is really bad at. Like I'm finding right now that Google is no longer useful as a search engine.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And so in the story, the robot tries to find the books a person is looking for, and they can't do it accurately, where a librarian is a better search engine, can find you what you need. I tried to have the two different kinds of librarian characters in this story. One is the very stereotypical old school librarian that I have known and worked with, the little old lady who is very stern and sitting at the desk. That I've worked with those people, the Brendas and the Debras, and then the young newer librarian who's very enthusiastic and outgoing and out there doing everything. They tend to see more often these days.
I apologize. I keep rubbing my eye. Something's irritating it. It's all good. It happens. But yeah, it was a lot of fun because your comic also had much more of the kind of like classic, cute indie comic feel to it, which is definitely refreshing in this particular anthology, since there's a lot of variety in styles.
Yeah, when very early on in this process, when I turned I don't remember if it was the finished comic or just some thumbnails into, there was a thing on the Discord of like, put your work here to have it checked. And all the comments I got were like, it's cute.
Hey, when you got a style, you got a style.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it was definitely nice to be able to, it was interesting when we actually received your application, because it's one of those things where your name as part of the inaugural class got thrown around a lot at CCS. So I definitely heard of you. And I was just interested, like, oh, hey, Colleen wants to work with us. Yay. That's an awesome moment.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that came from, I met Rainer, and is he like your co-editor or co-founder?
Yes, co-founder.
Yeah.
In fact, he's been in the chat, and I just haven't had a chance to bring up his stuff.
Hi.
But yeah, Rainer and I, back in 2020 during lockdown, we've been talking for a long time because we're actually in the same Dungeons and Dragons group. By the way, I see your Gilmore shirt. But we just kind of had the same basic idea for running a publishing group, and decided to test it out by making an anthology, and then realized making an anthology is better than our original idea. So we just started putting it all together. It went great. And we've kind of just been rolling since then.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met Rainer through some similar circumstances. We were in a Vampire the Masquerade group. And then mentioned that he had this anthology. So it's like, okay, yeah, always willing to send a comic for a friend's anthology.
Yeah, gotcha. I'm amazed I didn't know this, or I forgot it, because that absolutely seems like something Rainer would have said. We've talked about doing Vampire at some point, but we don't live in the same place.
Yeah, this was over Zoom. Yeah, and it was it was hard to schedule times because there were people in different coasts, and then one person in the group moved to Scotland, so we haven't met up since then.
That always complicates things. I gotta ask, what type of vampire?
The Nosferatu. That
you were the Nosferatu.
Yeah, I was playing had been a silent film starlet who then got turned, into this horrible, ugly monster, and was very upset about it.
Yeah, that sounds classic White Wolf. I love it. So is gaming a big part of your life? As I said, I noticed the Critical Role shirt. Are you heavily involved in any of that? Do you game regularly online, or?
I wish I did. It is. I think the thing that the trouble most gaming groups have is finding a time to meet up. That is always the hardest part. Critical Role I got into because I find a lot of artists like to have something on in the background while they're drawing. And the idea is it has to be interesting enough that you want to keep drawing, but it can't be too distracting, or else you're not going to draw. You're going to watch the thing. And for a long time, mine was Star Trek. And then I ran out of the Star Trek. I've watched all of it, even the bad ones like Enterprise, all the way up to the new ones, just finished Prodigy. But then when I was introduced to Critical Role, they have so much more stuff. When they have a show about once a week that's like 4 to 5 hours, you never really run out of stuff to have on the background in the background while you're drawing.
I kind of count Critical Role as being like Homestuck, where it's one of those things that people love but can't recommend because it's just too long.
I have avoided getting into Homestuck because I don't need a new special interest. But definitely heard of that. I'm lucky. My local comic book shop does a thing every now and then where they call it like a GM speed dating, where the local people who want to start a game will come and they'll have tables out and they'll pitch their game, and you can go around and see like, can I join this group and play with them? So I've been to one of those events. I need to go to another one just to see if I can actually join a gaming group.
That's a really good idea.
It's a really good idea. The Phoenix Comics in Seattle, they're a really good store.
Have you ever tried jamming?
Not yet, just because I have so little experience. I'd like to actually complete a campaign sometime. before I
Yeah.
started doing that. I did.
That's the dream.
Yeah, that is the dream.
Mm-hmm.
Before I was in comics, I was heavily involved in theater, though. That's sort of what got me into comics. Was I was doing a lot of theater and a lot of script writing, and then being really upset because I'd written this play. We go to perform it, and it is not what I pictured in my head. Whereas the comics, I can at least get closer to what I pictured in my head. So yeah, definitely the theater ties into gaming, ties into comics. Yeah. It's all one big mishmash.
That's amazing to hear, because I was an English and drama double major in college. I was a screenwriter for a lot of that stuff, and that's almost the exact reason why I got into comics.
Yeah.
So do you think writing came first for you before art, or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, writing definitely came first. That in high school, I was involved in all these. For some reason, there were a bunch of local playwriting festivals and contests and things in my area, like Tacoma, Lakewood, Washington, that don't exist anymore. And when I Google them, I can find no evidence of them. But that's what I was doing when I was a teenager. And then when I went off to college, the Evergreen State College doesn't have majors. Because it's a sort of a big, floaty, hippie school. But I was in a writing class called, I think that was Author. It was Bill Ransom was the teacher, and he got to work with, I can't remember the name of the guy who wrote Dune, Frank Herbert. He worked with Frank Herbert a lot, yeah. And Bill taught me a lot about writing. And one of the things, he came in the first day of class, and he was like, look, I have to write. If you don't have to write, please leave, because I don't need the competition. So I thought about that, going like, well, I don't really have to write. I do need to tell stories. And I really like drawing and comics. Maybe that's the thing I have to do. And I'm finding that to be more and more true, that when I don't have anything else going on in my life, I'm sitting down and drawing comics. That's the sort of driving creative force.
Yeah. I know for me, like working in film and things like that was sort of the compromise, because in my head, comics were a pipe dream.
Oh, wow.
Well, yeah, I thought film was the better route. I don't know why. But, and then a couple years working in customer service, because I graduated college right when the stock market crashed. So it was like, oh, none of this is happening for a bit. Kind of made me go, I just want to be making comics. Why don't I do that? Did you feel as part of when you were at CCS, because I don't know what it was like for your class. My class, people in that were absolutely great. I felt like I was one of the only people who came at it from the writing side before anything else, which definitely made me feel like I was playing catch up in a lot of ways. I'm curious if that was the vibe back at the very beginning.
So for the first class, it definitely, we had a lot of people who had never drawn a comic before their application. Like I know there was one person in my class, I won't name names here, but they had said that they applied to CCS because it was the cheapest MFA they could find. There was another person who, I'll say Sam Gaskin, he's still making comics sometimes, but really he's a musician. So it seems like when he makes comics, his comics pair with his music. And there were other people. There was a biologist who ended up kind of giving up on comics. And for her senior thesis, she turned in a novel, like a thick, like 600-page novel. And it was pretty good, but it definitely wasn't comics. So we were all over the place there. So yeah, I think I don't know if I was the only person approaching comics from a writer standpoint. I definitely approached them enough that when it came time to we had another writing class, and I went to Michelle and was just like, I don't need this. Like, I don't need to take another writing class. Can I please do an independent study, do something else? And she did, instead of letting me have a writing class that quarter, semester, whatever they had. She let me write a comic script to do sort of an independent thing. So that was nice that they were flexible there.
Yeah. One of the things that it's funny you mentioned they had too many writing classes, because when I went, they didn't really have a writing class at all. introduction to cartooning that Jason Lutz ran kind of covers it, but there wasn't an independent writing class, which I remember being surprised about. I'm wondering if part of that was they overdid it in the first class.
It could have been, yeah, and it also could have been that they really weren't teaching any writing specific to comics. And at least at the time, there was no like standard comic script format. I've seen some people trying to make a standardized format. And I really hope that happens. But yeah, it's a difficult subject to teach.
Yeah. I remember being surprised because I came from the script format and things like that. And that's always how I wrote stuff out. And I had classmates who were shocked that I was writing out the dialogue before drawing anything, because that's not how they do it. They write out what happens and they figure out the dialogue after they've drawn it. And they were just really confused by my method. I'm like, this is film. This is how they do it. Like, and it works for me. But
that way you can figure out how many words can fit in your panel that way.
Exactly. But yeah, it's interesting just to hear the differences. Like, do you remember what year were you at CCS? Well, I don't know off the top of my head what their graduation year was.
I don't know off the top of my head either. I want to say I got there in 2005 and graduated in 2007, but that's a guess.
Gotcha. So about 9 years roughly afterwards is when I went. Which it's amazing to hear how much it changed in that time. Have you been back to White River Junction anytime recently?
I have not. It's kind of difficult to get to. And I haven't had a reason to go back. I'm hoping I can someday. I would like to take my kid around and show her the town, introduce her to the people who are still living there, like Steve, and there's a few people I know who graduated who are still in the area. So yeah, it would be definitely nice. But
I will tell you, it's changed a lot. Even since I've been there, they've had a bit of a boom, and like there's a lot of new building out there. Some of the businesses have expanded. It's kind of cool to see. The town seems to be doing well. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some more apartment buildings were built and stuff like that. So that's great.
Yeah. So tell me, is there anything you can talk about that you're working on right now besides Universal Flaws of Robotics?
I can. So I have a new book coming out on September 3rd called Knots. And the publisher is Harper Alley, and the editor is Andrew Arnold, who was also in the first class at CCS. He's been really great. And I've been calling it semi-autobiographical because when I was a kid, I messed up my hair real bad. There was so many knots and tangles in it that we had to go get it all cut off, get it cut short, which it's been short ever since then. And so that was the first draft of the book. But then over the course of the story, went through so many edits and so many changes. One of the things we did almost immediately was age up the book, because that happened to me when I was in 3rd grade. And they were like, oh, this is a little too tense, a little too scary. Let's age it up to a 6th grader. So that's the fiction part working its way in. But yeah, this comes out September 3rd.
Exciting.
Thanks. And then I've got my long running series is Iron Scars, where this is sort of a dark fairy tale. I say it's like Goosebumps level of scary. That's what I'm aiming for. And it's about a group of kids on an island, and that's the part based in my real life. But then they get involved in this war with witches and fairies, and that's the fiction part there. Yeah.
That is fun that you're actually building it on an island based on your actual experience growing up. Are these stories you came up with as a kid, like all the fairy tale stuff?
I don't know if I came up with as a kid, but that's definitely what I wanted to read as a kid. Is I was always seeking out like the Lang fairy books, the Rainbow fairy books, and then also I want to attribute this to Linda Berry, but I'm not sure if it's right. Where she said like everything you ever want to write about happened in the first 10 years of your life, and I'm finding that more and more to be true.
Yeah, I kind of get that. I'm curious because you mentioned several publishers that you've worked with, and I know I personally haven't been either self-published or built my own publishing company, and haven't yet worked much with outside publishers. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, especially working with some of the larger studios like Dark Horse.
Yeah, so the Dark Horse thing happened because CCS got an email. They were like, hey, someone else dropped out. We need 8 color pages now. And so that was while I was a student. And so then everyone was rushing to get 8 color pages in. And I'm pretty sure I'm the first one who turned it in. So that was very much a race. And yeah, that was great. I don't think they had any edits on that story, but that was very much, I think there's quite a few projects I've been involved in where it was just like somebody else dropped out. They need a fill in fast. And I've learned how to work fast. But yeah, let's see.
So that's how.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so that's what got you started with Dark Horse?
I've only done the one story for them. So yeah, that was the work.
Okay.
The work I did with Dark Horse. Yeah, that was an issue of Dark Horse Presents. But at the time they were calling it MySpace Dark Horse Presents. So that you can see how old that was.
Wow. That is a throwback. Yeah. But you have also worked with several other studios, Zest Books, Mirage Studios. I'm just curious how that process ended up working for you. I'm currently in the process of shopping something around, and I'm curious how you were able to find studios that would work with you, how you got in with them. Did you use an agent, things like that?
Yeah, every single project has been totally different. The Mirage Studios, I co-wrote an issue of Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And that was also through CCS, where they came to the school and we're like, anyone want to do a script for a short story, one of the issues? And I think 3 or 4 of us turned one in, and the one I worked on was the only one where we went to the CCS library and we read the comics. So you have to do your research, because ours was based on the Tales of the TMNT comics, and the other people who turned in scripts just wrote what they remembered from the TV show. And the TV show and the comics are so entirely different that
right.
That's pretty much how ours worked out. And that was great because we got 4 students working on that issue where I co-wrote it. And then I think Andrew Arnold, who was my editor on Knots, he ended up penciling. And then Adam Staffaroni, who now runs Einhorn Epic Productions. They do comics too. I think he inked it. I could have Andrew and Adam switch there, but yeah, that was a lot of fun to do, like a big collaborative project and to do some Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's great. With Zest Books, so Liz Prince had done a graphic novel for them, Tomboy, and I wrote a review of it. And because I love the book, I wrote a little glowing review, and I think that was in the LA Review of Books. I'm not quite sure there, but the editor read my review and then saw my work and was like, oh, do you want to pitch us something? And for that pitch, I was able to get away with like a sample chapter and then an outline of the story. So very minimal. And he bought it and we made a graphic novel. But for, let's see, for Knots here, that was after I signed with my agent, Susan Hawk. And that was a much longer process of going back and forth on the story with her, going back and forth on how much should be in a pitch. She asked for a lot more writing and a lot more art to send out to editors. So it was a pretty huge pitch packet before that one. And that ended up with one editor who started working on it and then had to drop it and then went to another editor. So yeah, I bounced around a bit. But yeah, unfortunately, every single project is different, so I don't have really helpful advice there.
Yeah, no, I completely get that. I am particularly curious with the agent, because you mentioned you have one now. Did the agent find you? Did you find the agent? How did that work?
I found her. So I had found this list online of agents that'll work with graphic novels, and I sent pitches to them. And it took me about a year. And I got some really nice and encouraging rejections. I got some mean rejections. There's some people I got absolutely nothing from. With Susan, the thing I had pitched to her was Iron Scars, because I've been working on it forever and it's a long running series.
Mhm.
And she wrote back and she was like, I'm not interested in this, but what else do you got? So I was able to send her 3 or 4 other ideas. And then this was the one she liked. So it's very much project based. So yeah.
Gotcha. And that also includes a lesson that is kind of hard for a lot of creators. I know I definitely had to learn it. You got to get through a lot of rejections before you
A
get
lot.
someone to say yes. And you got to learn to be okay with that.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of rejections out there. It's better when they're nice ones. But the nice ones are the kind where they give constructive criticism and feedback and you can learn from them.
Right. The worst are the ones you don't hear back at all, because then you're just waiting to find out. And you're like, do I keep looking for stuff? Do I follow up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The when you just send stuff out into the void, when you never hear anything back, that's rough. The other thing I personally find rough was where it's just mean with nothing helpful. Like one person just wrote back, "This is really boring." It's like, all right, I don't know what to do with that. But beyond a lot of rejection, the other thing is that comics is really slow. Is that they take a long time to make and to draw, and then I found that it's going to take, once you send something out there, it's a minimum a month to get a response back, and it's because everyone on the other end is also really busy. So yeah, just everything about the process is super slow. You got to be patient.
Yeah. We are getting to close to the 45-minute mark. I do want to say to chat, if you want to go ahead and start posting questions, now would be the time. I am warning you, we're getting a little bit of a delay, I think, based on some of the comments. I haven't been bringing the comments up because they keep coming up like 10 to 15 minutes after they're relevant for some reason. So now would be a good time to start posting questions if you want that to be showing up by the end. But yeah, I'm trying to think. So working on this particular project with self-assessment and going through all this, I am curious if it's made you pay more attention to robot and AI stuff happening around you in general, because that keeps happening to me with any anthology I work on, is whatever the topic is, all of a sudden that's everywhere in my life.
Yes. And that it's also feels like it's everywhere in my life because my spouse works in video games, and AI is also starting to it's taken my jobs, it's taken his jobs, so it's coming in everywhere. And it's disappointing. It's always frustrating when I'm on social media and I see a cartoonist who's like, I thought this cartoonist was on the right side of history, and then find out that they're using AI to generate ideas. Or one person I saw recently they weren't having luck getting a diagnosis, so they were using Chat GPT to figure out what was wrong with them health wise. And it's like, but Chat GPT doesn't know anything. They're not a doctor yet. They're not as smart as your doctor. So yeah, it just seems to be popping up everywhere and in really weird ways, and it's disappointing and frustrating.
Why can't it do cool stuff like librarian things?
Yeah.
But yeah, when we did the cryptid anthology, all of a sudden I started seeing Mothman hoodies everywhere, just randomly, which I should have expected more. I live in Ohio now. But then we did a gnome anthology, and those little gnome dolls started showing up everywhere.
You guys are trendsetters.
Apparently. Then we started working on this, and now I go into BJ's Wholesale, and they've got a stocking robot that's like checking inventory.
No, dang, that is frustrating. Well, I guess that's a way that I can see the robots being used effectively. It's like,
yeah.
I remember for a long time I worked at Target, and we could never hire enough people. That they were constantly doing events, trying to get enough people to work in the store. That I appreciate self-checkout.
Yeah. Self-checkout definitely is one of the things that's been popping up everywhere. This robot doesn't seem too bad either, because like stocking a wholesale place, like that's the equivalent of Costco or things along those lines. If people aren't familiar with BJ's Wholesale, it's basically one of those.
Okay.
But yeah, like that makes a lot of sense because they have giant packages of things. It's easy for humans to miss in something that big. I get a robot going through and scanning that. That seems practical. I also find it funny because they've kind of humanized the thing. Like it has a face, like a little digital face. It makes like R2D2 noises when people are nearby.
Okay. So they're going
Yeah,
for the friendly robot there.
exactly.
Mhm.
That's the one that'll kill you in the apocalypse, though. But yeah, are there any other industries, like you mentioned the video game industry, which I know is
Mhm.
being hit with this?
Yes.
Voice actors are worried about their voices getting stolen or lines being generated instead of actually getting an actor to do some of the filler stuff.
Mhm.
Um, like that, actually, the filler stuff is one of the things that is a concern because there are so many little jobs that are important because they're employing people or they're giving people their start that there's a lot of concern about AI taking the place of.
Yeah, I can see in the film industry those filler jobs are where you do the training, where you learn to do the larger roles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, other industries where I know it's a problem, music. I've been really frustrated lately that whenever it seems like whenever I'm on TikTok and there's a catchy little song, I find out that it's AI generated. It's like,
Mm,
darn, I don't want this to be catchy, but it's
yeah.
only catchy because it's stolen all of this artwork from all this other artists and then amalgamated it. Yeah, trying to think what are other areas. Yeah, video games are definitely a problem. And it's from because my spouse is job hunting right now and keeps seeing postings for, do you want to come work on this AI game? And it's like, no, I don't want to. I don't
Yeah.
want to feed the thing that's taking my job away. And then of course, like I'm the environmental impacts are really troubling. I saw some quote from Bill Gates lately that he thinks that AI is going to solve the problems caused by AI, and it's like, what is the point of that?
Yeah, that's a bit of an Ouroboros situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rayner does bring up, I think AI art won't ever really catch on just because we want specificity of human experience, which is one of the things that I don't hear talked about as much, but it is very true. Like one of the things you kind of learn, especially once you started doing, publishing your own work and things like that, is on one level, you're selling the actual product. And on another level, you're selling you. You're selling you as a creator, your voice, your experience, and that is uh, something that can just generate a product isn't going to be able to capture in the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the other major concerns that I keep seeing about AI is while it could potentially make certain in-between processes and things like that significantly easier,
Mhm.
automation like that in the past, which probably should be reducing work, is actually causing people to have to do more work and just increase productivity. Uh, the example I keep hearing brought up is animation, where, if you can use AI to help create some of your in-betweening frames and things like that, so that your animators could theoretically not be working 100-hour work weeks in sweatshops, that'd be
Mhm.
great, except they're still going to have to work 100-hour work weeks in sweatshops. They just have to put out more content.
Yeah, and with animation specifically, you get into the problem of union busting,
Right.
where people used to say, "Oh, we can't do hand-drawn animation anymore; it's too expensive." And the thing that
Yeah.
actually made it expensive was the hand-drawn animators had a union, and the CG animators, as far as I understand, they don't have a union yet. But there's a lot of
Yeah.
talks about building some, getting them involved in them, and then AI comes along, and now the AI artists aren't going to have unions, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also the reason why practical effects have had a serious downturn.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talk about that a lot in this house.
Big fans of practical effects all around. I feel like everybody likes practical effects.
I like practical effects. I like CG effects as well, but yeah, the CG artists don't get a union, so they're working themselves to death.
Yeah. And that's the exact thing. The reason so much stuff went towards CG is because the practical effects specialists are unionized and more expensive. And they should be, just to be clear. I'm not saying that's a
No, yeah,
bad thing. I'm saying get everybody unionized.
yeah. So I'll mention again the cartoonist co-op that we're trying to form a union, kind of.
Absolutely. Do you happen to know the link for them?
Let's see. Cartoonist.coop. So they've got the .coop domain.
So like that.
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. All right. If people are cartoonists and are interested in that kind of thing, which you probably should be, definitely give that a look. But yeah, that's actually one thing that I've had a lot of discussions with people about, is that there needs to be a guild or a union of some kind. I'm thinking probably guild makes more sense. But it is the closest I've seen before, because I hadn't heard of this group, is the Graphic Artists Guild.
Yes.
With the Society of Illustrators. I'm curious, did you get that giant book of best practices from them?
I've never been able to afford it. I've definitely looked at it in the library a lot. And that's the other thing about the Graphic Artists Guild or the Society of Illustrators. They're expensive. I know people who are members because they've gotten to the point in their life where they're successful enough they can afford that. Right now, one of the things that drew me to the Cartoonist Co-op is it's free. I can definitely do that price point. Yeah.
Hey, free is great. But yeah, I was actually partially curious because that's now a graduation thing they give you at CCS.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, just a copy of that book. The version we got had, quite frankly, the most butt ugly cover I've ever seen, and I have no idea how that happened, considering who the guild's for. But if anyone's not familiar with it, it's the Society of Illustrators Graphic Artists Pricing and Best Practices Guide, I think it's called. They release one every few years, and if you're able to get your hands on a copy, it has a lot of really good advice for what you should be charging people, different legal things you might want to consider, and it's for all visual media, pretty much. Like it's a tome this thick, and it's got a lot of really good information. Highly recommend checking it out if you're able to get your hands on it. And if not,
second that.
And if not, ask a robot at your local library.
Yeah, one question I see over and over again online from cartoonists is like, how much should I charge for this? How much should I be paid for this job? And like that's where you should look. That's always a good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also important that cartoonists be talking to each other, because especially with pricing, that's one of the things that we all have a bad habit of not pricing our stuff correctly.
Yes.
And it's easy to just not know that you've done that. I only recently upgraded my pricing for 2024, realizing that I was probably charging about a third of what I should have been for commission work and things like that. And it just like, you don't know until you talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, you're undercharging.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something Steve Bassetta's brought up, is that like the people right now the page rates they're paying are the same that he used to make in the 80s. And says the rates seem to stay stagnant even as time moves on, as you definitely have to think as the years go by, okay, should I be upping my rates? Keep up with inflation.
Yeah. This is also why consumers should be looking at indie comics and paying for the stuff that's more expensive, because we're dealing with inflation and we're not getting paid fairly a lot of times.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is all the economics of this stuff is challenging, which is why we've decided to make big old books. All right, we're getting right around to the hour mark. I do want to talk a little bit more about Universal Flaws of Robotics, just so people know to check it out. Universal Flaws of Robotics is a comics anthology all about automata. We have 19 stories featuring a bunch of talented creators, including Colleen. And the stories range from being about robot librarians to, the classic transhumanist horror that you pretty much have to have in a robot anthology at some point. But yeah, we have 196 pages of comic, and are going to have additional content on top of that. So it's looking to be quite a chunker of a book, and it is currently on sale for $25, which is down from the $30 we're planning to retail it at. We also have a special deal going, an early bot special going for the first week. That'll end on Sunday. And if not only do you get the book at that discounted rate, you can get a discounted copy of the poster with the amazing art that you can kind of see in the background here. Hold on, I'll pop it out. I'll hide this for a second. Wait. I can do things. This amazing art by J.M. Hunter. You can get that poster and the book. Total is going to be $35, which is a discounted rate, and that is only through Sunday, so make sure you grab that while you can. And we also have that on T-shirts, which you should definitely check out in our add-ons. All right. That's going to... Oh, and one thing I'll also throw out there is that we did officially during this pass the 20% mark, which...
Yay!
Pretty awesome.
Has it even been 24 hours yet?
Tell us, is there... Oh, yeah, no, we launched on Sunday, so it's been 72 hours, I think.
Okay, okay, great.
Yeah. But hey, 20% that early is a very good thing, and we're just going to keep going up. And we especially want to keep going up because the higher we go, the more we get to pay people, which, as we just discussed, is an important issue. So tell us, Colleen, where can people find your work and what is coming up soonest?
You can find my work at tragicrelief.com. I am at Colleen Frakes on most of the socials because there's only one other Colleen Frakes out there. And I usually snap up the username first. And then for what's coming next, Knots is a middle grade book about anxiety and messing up my hair that comes out September 3rd. And yeah, that's the next thing coming out.
Sounds good. And you can find all of our work and the Kickstarter at tinyurl.com/UFRcomic. That Kickstarter is going to be running through August 13th. And you can find my work at BWH Comics on Patreon, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube, or at bwhcomics.com. So that's going to wrap things up. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Colleen, do you have a sign-off or anything like that when you do live streams?
This is the first live stream I've ever done, so thank you.
Awesome. We got you media. This is fantastic. Well, then I will go ahead and just do my sign-off. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, rock on, guys, and never stop drawing.